Florida Gators looking to add their name to the list of the elite college football teams, and they may need some elite quarterback play to do so. We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown, and of course, lock it in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. David, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good, Mark. Spring practice right around the corner for the Gators.
There you go. Kyle Trask was not supposed to be the starting quarterback ever for this football program based on his inability to be a starting quarterback in high school and not projected to be a great quarterback at this level. But here we are after a Felipe Franks injury. Trask takes over. By all indications, no. Did he play perfect? Was he one of the very best in the country? Not necessarily, but man, I thought he delivered. And your thoughts about his 2019 and what that could look like going into 2020 in terms of development under one of the best in Dan Mullen.
Mark, it's funny if, just for sake of time here, we can go into it. But if everybody wants to go back, we just had a long, gigantic conversation about this on Gators Breakdown this past week. So we're previewing, the next couple of weeks. We just previewed the offense. We had a Q&A session with our listeners, so they sent a whole bunch of questions in. Of course, quarterback was part of the question there, but we just did offense this past week. We'll do defense next week, and of course, one of the topics was what do we want to see from Kyle Trask, Emory Jones, Anthony Richardson so far this spring? And Mark, you're right. Kyle Trask did come in, played better than Felipe Franks. This offense could not get anything going out of the run game, and so teams knew Florida was going to pass. By the time midseason rolled around, you knew Florida was a passing team. Now, I won't necessarily say air raid team because that also means schematic changes. This was more still that Florida threw the ball a lot, but they still threw the ball a lot within the scheme of Dan Mullen's offense. They didn't go change offenses just because they were throwing the ball more. It was still within Dan Mullen's scheme. So you saw a lot of screen passes. And a lot of screen passes, not necessarily because Kyle Trask doesn't have the greatest arm strength. He doesn't, but that's not why you saw so many screen passes. You saw so many screen passes because the run game wasn't going. It was an extension of the run game, and Florida was so deep at receivers. And you go back and look at the Combine last week, and you had all those receivers there at the Combine running blazing speeds, and Florida was getting the ball in their playmakers' hands as quick as possible. The old offensive line, they could block well, but they couldn't hold blocks too long. So I think a lot of the offense was designed just to really get the ball out of Kyle Trask's hands. So the next step, Mark, what I want to see this spring is, can he hit some of these downfield passes? As I just said, he gets hit for his arm strength a little bit, and that's a fair criticism. But how much does it hold the offense back, I think, is a question. It was an issue against Georgia. Georgia was able to squeeze him there, and knowing Florida couldn't run the ball, and they forced Kyle Trask to beat him, and you couldn't really do much into that game until the fourth quarter rolled around in that game. So against LSU, we went almost toe-to-toe with Joe Burrow he all night, but here comes the fourth quarter, and the costly interceptions. So, maybe getting better in clutch situations, but also being able to, throw the ball down the field, have some confidence throwing the ball down the field. But that's also going to be dependent on the rest of the offense helping him out. Not having so many passing situations where everybody knows the pass is coming and you got to go beat a cover two out there. Florida's offense designed with the run game to run teams out of that cover two, bring a safety down, and you got easier coverages on the back end. So it's not just on Kyle Trask of why the downfield passing game didn't work last year, but there are places he can get better in that. So, Mark, if you go back and look at the previous season, Felipe Franks actually threw more screens and relied on the screen game more than Kyle Trask did. And as far as percentages go. So, that has nothing to do with arm strength because Felipe Franks has one of the strongest arms in the country. But it was more of a design of the offense there. Felipe Franks had a lot more help with the run game as well. So, can the offense get better with Kyle Trask? Yes, but at the same time, it was still good enough to go get 11 wins last year.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Gators with David Waters. So what you need to do is like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe right here. But as David alluded to off the top, if you love Florida football, man, I cannot imagine that you're not following Gators Breakdown. So you do that on YouTube or one of your favorite audio platforms because, man, we get David on here as much as possible just to fill us in on Florida football because I'm trying to cover everyone. But, man, deep dive on Florida football, get on over there because it's great stuff. Emory Jones, of course, is a tremendous talent, 5-star quarterback, taken away from Ohio State in regards to the recruiting process. Are are they keeping him happy by the role that they've given him the last few seasons, and especially last year? Because based on what I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, it was not necessarily a Justin Fields role where Kirby Smart didn't let Justin Fields throw the ball in meaningful minutes against decent opponents. But Emory Jones, they pretty much just give him the flow of the offense. And of course, it's more run heavy when he's in there to highlight his skill set. But they let him throw the ball downfield.
Yeah, Mark. We discussed this at length too, and look, there is a contingent of Gator fans out there who would like to see Emory Jones get more playing time, or even be the starting quarterback. And don't get me wrong, it's and we discussed this kind of a couple weeks ago. We all know the ceiling of a Dan Mullen offense is higher with a dual threat quarterback, and that's most offenses around the country. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the best option right now. So with Emory Jones. And what he showed last season, it was more of it was kind of clunky when he would come in at times. It looked pretty good when Florida was on the road at LSU. But let's not go back. But let's go back and let's not forget that he was pretty instrumental in Florida getting a win over Auburn early in the year. Kyle Trask gets hurt, goes down in that game. It looked like a pretty gruesome injury. Not knowing if he'd come back from that, and he did. And I'm not sure if he was ever really 100% the rest of the season, but. Kyle Trask goes down, and in a close game versus Auburn, where Florida needed all the points that they could give, Emory Jones comes in and goes 3 for 4 in passing down the field, and leads Florida to an important field goal in a very close game. And it looked like there was some trust in him to be able, and against one of the best defenses in the country in Auburn, for him to pass the ball 3 out of 4 times, or complete 3 out of 4 pass attempts on a drive in a close game. But we didn't necessarily see that trust anywhere else in the regular season. And so that's kind of why Gator fans are baffled. It was like, hey, you let him go against one of the best defenses in the country and let him throw the ball in an important situation, but we didn't necessarily see that too much the rest of the season. It was more when he would come in, it was a run threat, or Florida would cross the 35, 30-yard line and then bring him in for a couple plays, and then here come Kyle Trask back out. It was, like I said, it didn't run as smoothly as we all remember Chris Leak and Tim Tebow back in 2006. So, fans just want to see more of Emory Jones. But look, there's parts of Emory Jones as well. Does he know the playbook? Can he get the plays in? Can he get the offensive line the right calls? Can he instead of looking at to the sideline and getting the right play from the coaching staff? Can he go out there and not necessarily have to rely on that and know the offense himself, get it all sped up? So there are things that he can do better as well, but it was kind of mystifying of being able to trust him in such a big game and not necessarily seeing him put that all together at any other point in the rest of the season.
So no quarterbacks taken in the 2020 class, as I see here. Jalen Jones, 2019 recruit and signee. What do we know about him?
Jalen Jones, Mark, he was kicked off the team after spring last year.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, so they brought in Anthony Richardson, who more than likely looks like to be the prototypical quarterback for Dan Mullen. Big-bodied quarterback, got so much better between his junior, senior season. Completion percentage went way up. He works with Denny Thompson, a quarterback trainer here in Jacksonville, Florida, and you could really tell he put in a whole lot of work, got much better in his senior season before he was injured and wasn't really able to finish the season there. But early returns on him. He took part in some of the bowl practices before Florida played Virginia, before they went down to Miami to practice. He took part in a couple of practices on campus there at Florida, and early returns are really good for him. But he's the quarterback that I think everybody's really, really pointing to as the quarterback that kind of Dan Mullen's been waiting for, in that mold of Tim Tebow, in that mold of Dak Prescott. So that's probably the quarterback to look out for. Not to shy away from Emory Jones. He still may get his chance next year as a starting quarterback, or maybe sometime this year or this coming up season as well. This is 2020. This was the year everybody, when Emory Jones was recruited and signed, this was the year everybody was pointing to to see Emory Jones. Little did we know Felipe Franks would have some success in 2018, and Kyle Trask would have so much success in 2019, and it's probably going to bleed over to where he's the starter in 2020. Sometimes it just doesn't go the way you plan, Mark. So Anthony Richardson looks to be that next big time quarterback under Dan Mullen. They got Carlos Del Rio, who's committed as well for the 2021 cycle. Everybody can go listen to the interview I had with him just a couple weeks ago on Gators Breakdown and what kind of type of kid that Florida's getting with him. But I'm a big believer, and I think you have to do it. You have to bring a quarterback in every year. And like I said, Florida's already learned that. Jalen Jones already not part of the team anymore. So there was kind of a hit there in the way you recruit a quarterback. Like I said, I'm a big believer in getting one every year. So they were able to keep Emory Jones around for another year. Anthony Richardson's there. Carlos Del Rio already committed. So the future for quarterback looks pretty bright for the Gators and Dan Mullen.
For the first time in almost a decade, the Gators at wide receiver in 2019 were one of the best in the SEC and actually had the quarterback kind of play that could highlight that. But what are they going to have here in 2020? We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown to break down the wide receiver position. So a lot of turnover there, David, when we run down that group. So what are you looking like this rotation is going to look like here in this fall?
First of all, right before I start this, Mark, everybody needs to go to Twitter right now and go look up Jacob Copeland's workout picture he just posted, because he looks like a monster out there. He looks like a beast. His traps are almost up to his ears. That's how big he's gotten there. So Jacob Copeland, I even said it on Gators Breakdown this week when we were previewing the offense with Freddie Swain, Josh Hammond, Tyree Cleveland, Ben Jefferson, all going on to the NFL. This is the year I'm looking for Jacob Copeland to really break out. And that's not his production so far, to me, is not necessarily a hit on him. I just named 4 guys who's going to be playing on Sundays in the NFL. Was Jacob Copeland highly recruited? Maybe we'd like to see some more production from him so far. Absolutely. But those 4 guys are going to be playing on Sundays in the NFL. So no shame in not getting so much playing time over those guys. Those guys were so good. We saw it last year. So Jacob Copeland, this is the year I'm really looking at this year. If him being that big-time breakout wide receiver, maybe even using that Percy Harvin role a little bit, taking some handoffs in the backfield. Because, as I said, he's a big body. He can take the hits. He can take the hits over and over again. He's a big body target. He can go up and be physical and go catch a pass as well. So if Jacob Copeland's that receiver I'm really expecting a big year from. Kadarius Toney comes back this year as the all-electric playmaker. Everybody remembers scoring the first touchdown of the season versus Miami last year with a screen gadget play. He just takes all the way. Of course, Trevon Grimes decided to come back this year as well. And Mark, you kind of have to throw him into this mix too. Yes, he's a tight end, but Kyle Pitts, a lot of people out there putting him the number 1 tight end in the country, and a lot of that is based because of him being that receiving threat from the tight end position. So while Florida loses so much of that wide receiver core, they still, counting Kyle Pitts, still return like 40 to 45% of the returning yardage there from last year. So you lose a lot, but you also bring a lot back. So I think what spring's going to come about, Mark, is what guys can really show up that got redshirted last year. You get Trenton Whittemore, Deontay Marks, Jamarcus Weston, guys that got redshirted last year, not a lot of playing time there, or somebody like Rick Wells who's been around the program for a few seasons and still has yet to really break out. So that spring's really, really important for those group of guys, because I think we know what we have in Trevon Grimes. I think Jacob Copeland does take a step. We know what we have Kadarius Toney, Kyle Pitts. So those guys that they're kind of the unsung heroes. There's like 2 tiers of Florida receivers: guys you know what to expect and guys you have no idea what to expect.
So when Grimes came into the program, I believe that he was expected to be a big-time player. He caught 33 last year and 3 touchdowns. But you're thinking Copeland's more of the number 1 type receiver.
Mark, go back and you probably got the stats there looking at there. I don't know if there's really a true number 1. Van Jefferson was, I guess you could say, the number 1 last year. But Kyle Pitts, Van Jefferson, off 1A, 1B. They spread. Dan Mullen spreads the ball out so well, and so putting a 1-2 on a guy, it's kind of difficult in this offense because they do spread the ball around a lot. So it's not having, hey, this guy has to be the guy to go catch a pass. It's, oh, that guy's open, let me throw it to him. That's about how it works in the last couple seasons under Dan Mullen. Van Jefferson, if you wanted to label a number one, he was the number one. But, Trevon Grimes, Jacob Copeland, I'd put those guys on about an even level right now.